The cameras were in motion. The audience was observing. Then it took place. At last, Bishop J. Drew, who was renowned for his cool head and measured speech, lost it. He confronted Bishop Hogan head-on in an unexpected live moment, using remarks that rocked the gospel community. For years, the tension had been growing off-camera and behind closed doors. However, it was now visible to all. Bishop J. Drew's remarks went beyond simple criticism. It was simultaneously a revelation, a confrontation, and a proclamation. And when the live stream revealed the truth, the emotions were quick, intense, and unvarnished. Rumors have been circulating around the gospel community's hallways for years. Unspoken rivalries, tension, and disputes that few dared to bring up in public. Bishops J. Drew and Hogan, two significant figures whose paths have frequently crossed, sometimes amicably, sometimes tensely, are at the heart of it all. And finally, following months of conjecture and drama behind the scenes, everything burst into the open for everyone to see. We're dissecting the entire narrative in today's video, from the build-up to Bishop J. Drew's eventual outburst to the live altercation that surprised the crowd. You'll learn the insider information, the background that went unreported, and the telltale clues that this moment was imminent long before the cameras captured it. The history of these two leaders, their ongoing disputes, and the responses of the gospel community and the general public will all be covered. You won't merely hear the events. You'll learn why it's important, how it affects people's reputations, and what it says about authority, influence, and responsibility in the church. You'll see why this altercation is more than just a story by the end of this video. It's a cultural moment that reveals realities that few people were prepared to acknowledge, and the subsequent events. The plot takes a very unexpected turn at that point. We must go back a few years to a period when tensions were subtly simmering behind closed doors in order to see why Bishop J. Drew's live encounter with Bishop Hogan caused such a stir. On the surface, both leaders seemed to respect one another, working together on gospel events, conferences, and community projects. However, friction and conflicts were growing beneath the surface. It is subtle, nearly undetectable to those outside the inner circles, but obvious to those inside. According to gospel community sources, a rift was progressively developed by disparities in public influence, theological focus, and leadership style. Bishop Hogan, whose forceful, loud demeanor and assertive leadership style could control conversations and public areas, frequently clashed behind the scenes with Bishop J. Drew, who was noted for his cool, collected, and somewhat cautious attitude. In private, what appeared to be unity was actually a delicate balancing act between the two leaders, who were carefully controlling appearances as their frustrations grew. The murmurs began softly. Disagreements that no one wanted to publicly express started to surface in conversations at conferences, church activities, and after-service get-togethers. Individuals would make remarks about missed recognition, subtle slights, and visual disparities. These murmurs became louder over time. Insiders recount instances in which discussions aimed for organizing gospel events would turn into heated arguments as each party attempted to exert influence without starting a direct conflict, a delicate dance between pride and power. In the meantime, little instances started to gain more attention on social media. Supporters observed hidden remarks made during interviews, nuanced jabs in speeches, and conflicting messages in social media posts. Online observers cobbled together a story of rivalry that had been simmering for years, even though neither leader officially addressed the problem. While some supported Bishop J. Drew's methodical, moral approach, others appreciated Bishop Hogan's boldness. Gradually, the stage was being prepared for the final live clash. A rising sense that something was going to shatter was fueled by every postponed agreement, every lecture that was amended, every public argument, and even small body language at gatherings. Additionally, according to insiders, Bishop J. Drew had been debating in private how to handle the conflict, whether to say nothing, deal with it in private, or eventually make a statement that would be clear and accountable. The tension had escalated to a breaking point by the time the cameras started rolling that fateful day. The culmination of Bishop J. Drew's patience, cautious diplomacy, and covert attempts to keep things peaceful had reached a breaking point, and the outcome was an unexpected live encounter that changed people's opinions of both leaders and sparked discussions throughout the gospel community. The moment came during what appeared to be a typical ceremony, but even before a word was said, everyone in the crowd could sense the tension. A room full of gospel enthusiasts, ministers, and congregations held their collective breath while cameras rolled and cell phones were prepared. Bishop J. Drew, who often speaks in public with poise and reserve, assumed the pulpit with a composed yet authoritative demeanor. However, there was a sense of something important in his tone, something that had been subtly developing for years. He started with introspection rather than a loud charge. He recognized their common past, their shared achievements, and the beneficial contributions he and Bishop Hogan had made to the gospel community. But then, Bishop J. Drew spoke something that nobody had anticipated, causing the audience to freeze. A call for accountability, a public corrective, and a direct challenge all combined into one. Bishop J. Drew said, "He has been given every opportunity to lead rightly, in a firm yet steady voice. However, decisions have repercussions, and sometimes we have to face the reality head-on, even if it makes us uncomfortable." The audience was filled with murmuring in response to the announcement. Tilted smartphones recorded every phrase. The crowd and other pastors in attendance looked at each other, recognizing that they were witnessing a historic event, a rare public reprimand between two well-known figures in the gospel. The nuanced way Bishop Drew struck a balance between diplomacy and authority was what made this clash even more compelling. He refrained from making a personal assault. Rather, he framed the comments as accountability, stressing leadership responsibilities and ideals. But the connotation was clear. His remarks were a direct reaction to Bishop Hogan's perceived errors and recurring behavior, actions that had never been discussed in public, but that insiders had been silently criticizing for years. His use of pauses and pacing was observed. Because each comment was measured, the full impact of his words was felt. "Leadership is not about position. It's about responsibility," he stated. "Silence is no longer acceptable when we fail to fulfill our responsibilities." Bishop Hogan was shown in the video, looking slightly surprised. The audience could feel the tension, the gravity of the situation, and the importance of being publicly criticized by a peer, since his reaction, subtle as it was now captured on camera in the live setting. The mood was later characterized by some onlookers as electrifying, a mixture of astonishment, amazement, and respect. Then came the most startling line, the one that went viral on the internet and sparked discussion. "The decisions that impact the ministry, the legacy, and the flock cannot be disregarded. Accountability is a must." For those in attendance, those statements were the result of years of invisible stress. They were clear-cut and straightforward. In a matter of minutes, social media exploded. Videos of the live altercation were circulated, replayed, and analyzed on various platforms. Supporters argued on Bishop J. Drew's motivations. Was this publicized personal grievance, a moral lesson, or tough love? Others conjectured about Bishop Hogan's reaction, speculating on whether it would be as assertive, defensive, or conciliatory. However, the bigger connotations were just as dramatic as the actual words. The gospel community had a cultural turning point as a result of this encounter. It brought to light the repercussions of unresolved conflict among leaders, the brittleness of reputations, and the significance of accountability. It served as a reminder that even those who are respected for their knowledge, clout, and leadership are subject to criticism, contestation, or public rectification. Additionally, insiders disclosed that there was more to the tale, just as everyone believed the tension had peaked. Behind-the-scenes activities, confidential discussions, and unreported disputes complicated what the public saw. The drama then moved beyond the pulpit and into a series of disclosures that completely upended the gospel community. Bishop J. Drew's live statements were captured on camera, but what most people missed was a whole undercurrent of private hostility that had been simmering for years. According to people close to both leaders, the public showdown was preceded by a series of off-camp arguments, calculated moves, and behind-the-scenes discussions. These weren't small arguments. Conflicts over leadership, doctrine, ministerial influence, and the course of the gospel community were intensely personal. Both of them served Bishop J. Drew had made several attempts at private interventions, according to insiders. Prior to the live event, he made several attempts to correct Bishop Hogan's alleged errors via phone conversations, in-person encounters, and even mediated talks at church conferences. Bishop J. Drew reportedly became increasingly frustrated as each attempt was met with opposition or rejection. He is said to be struggling with a tough choice. Either keep dealing with the problems in private, running the danger of being ineffectual, or bring them to the public's attention so that accountability can no longer be disregarded. Bishop Hogan was allegedly taking his own calculated risks in the meanwhile. Insiders claim that at times, his team tried to sway opinions during interviews, conferences, and inside Sheard ministries. The stakes were raised by an unspoken rivalry that developed when others in the know recognized these subtle actions. It was more than just personal hostility. It has to do with authority, perception, and control in a very apparent spiritual network. The leaders were not the only ones involved in the conflict. They had to balance loyalty, prudence, and their own reputations while dealing with staff, ministry associates, and even conference organizers caught in the crossfire. Some apparently leaked information about internal conflicts to the media or social media. Others took sides, while still others attempted to mediate discreetly. As a result, a private conflict progressively intensifies into a public spectacle. This behind-the-scenes drama is especially captivating because of Bishop J. Drew's emotional toll. According to close sources, he found it difficult to bear the responsibility of speaking out in public since he knew it might be interpreted as hostile or polarizing, but he also understood that being a leader meant making tough choices, occasionally at the price of popularity, comfort, or interpersonal connections. This part of the article also provided insider information about his motivations as he reportedly struggled with the topic. How do you uphold principles, protect your ministry, and remain faithful to your calling while confronting another respected leader? Propelling both bishops. Sources claim that Bishop J. Drew was extremely worried about the ministry's long-term viability, the gospel community's standing, and the example set for next pastors and members. Conversely, Bishop Hogan was perceived as defensive of his power and reluctant to acknowledge errors in ways that might be interpreted as weakness. Years of unresolved complaints compounded the collision of these priorities, creating an almost unavoidable tension that was like a powder keg waiting for a spark. And it wasn't just a confrontational moment when that spark eventually appeared on live camera. It was the result of years of invisible work, annoyances, and power struggles. Yes, what the public saw was dramatic, but it was just the beginning. The intricate network of private deeds, calculated choices, and emotional stakes that preceded this historic public event told the larger tale. However, the tale doesn't stop there. Congregations, ministries, and the larger gospel community were all impacted in unexpected ways by the consequences from both the in-person altercation and the internal conflicts. It sparked discussions on public figures' duties, loyalty, leadership, and accountability, discussions that are still going on today. The instant Bishop J. Drew's remarks were broadcast live, it was an instantaneous and powerful response. Short videos of the altercation quickly spread on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and other social media sites. The interaction was replayed by fans, churchgoers, and gospel fanatics, who analyzed each gesture, pause, and well-chosen remark. Bishop J. Drew received a barrage of comments, some of which praised his honesty and bravery. Others are challenging his choice to provide personal information. Officially, the discussion had gone viral. Hashtags related to the live altercation started trending on Twitter, causing a digital maelstrom that spread well beyond the boundaries of the church. Reaction videos and memes went viral, with many highlighting the famous instance in which Bishop J. Drew's tone changed from one of thoughtful contemplation to stern reprimand. Some admirers praised his bravery, interpreting it as an essential stance for ethics and accountability in the Christian community. Others discussed the ramifications. Was this a public airing of personal complaints within the gospel community itself, or was it a leadership lesson? The responses were just as strong. Pastors, ministers, and ministry leaders expressed their opinions both in private and in public. Bishop J. Drew received support from others, who praised him for his principled and unwavering attitude. Others voiced worries that the altercation would cause rifts, provoke controversy, or establish a standard for open disagreements between religious officials. According to insiders, leaders are attempting to digest the implications and negotiate the changing dynamics of respect and influence through a flurry of private phone conversations and meetings. Congregations were also affected. Churchgoers interpreted the confrontation in their own ways as they discussed the incident in small groups, during fellowship, and even during sermons. It was widely regarded as a turning point, a public appeal for responsibility, openness, and accountability. Others struggled to balance their respect for both leaders with the turmoil they had seen, feeling shocked, perplexed, or even disappointed. In the meantime, gospel content producers and digital influencers swiftly profited from the story. Analysis films that broke down the confrontation moment by moment, discussed the ramifications, and offered theories about what led Bishop J. Drew to eventually come up were produced by YouTube channels, podcasts, and social media pages. The live altercation turned into a case study on accountability, leadership, and influence, showing how public persons in prominent positions need to strike a balance between honesty and diplomacy. However, the impact extended beyond discussion and analysis. It also caused introspection among those in positions of authority. Insiders claim that some ministers started re-evaluating how they handled responsibility, mentoring, and dispute resolution inside their own ministries. Others stood back to assess the power structures in their communities, realizing that even highly esteemed leaders are responsible for their choices and deeds. Most significantly, this incident generated cultural discussions outside of the gospel group. Beyond the confines of the church, conversations about accountability, openness, and the effects of unbridled power spread to larger societal settings. Bishop J. Drew's live confrontation turned out to be more than one incident. On many levels, it served as a catalyst for introspection, discussion, and transformation. Additionally, insiders disclosed that the public altercation was only one aspect of the tale. Just as it appeared to have peaked, few outside viewers were able to completely understand the layers of intricacy that were added by private talks, unseen gestures, and post-event exchanges that continued to shape the repercussions.